Hi everyone, welcome to Chapter 9, Compound Interest. So the last chapter that we covered, which was Chapter 7, we talked about simple interest. And simple interest, if you remember, relates to interest being charged on shorter periods of time. Could be a matter of 3 days, and you're charged interest just on the investment or the use of money for 3 days. Compound interest tends to be a little bit longer. I say a little bit, but anything over a year. So, you may have a mortgage that's 25 years. It's definitely going to be compound interest that you're being charged. All right, so let's have a look. Okay, so compound interest means that interest is being calculated on previous interest amounts as well as the principal. So what that means is that you're earning interest on your interest. So if you invest $100 at the beginning of the year, it's being compounded annually, so only once a year. So you invest that $100 at the end of the year. Let's say you earn 10% interest. So at the end of that year, you're going to have $110 in that account. And if you leave that money in there, then all through the second year, it's going to be the $110. So that at the end of the second year, you're going to earn interest on the $110. 100 being your original investment and $10 being the amount of interest you earned in the first year. So your interest is going to be earning interest. Okay, so compound interest tends to be used for longer periods of time, as I mentioned. So it's very common in finance. So whether it's an RRSP or another form of investment that you're making for your retirement, or even if you're saving money, say for 4 years in order to buy a car. Or maybe it's getting a car loan and having that loan for 5 years. Or getting a mortgage and having a mortgage for 25 years. All of those examples would involve compound interest. Okay, so there's the compounding period. So whether it's annual, semi-annual, monthly, quarterly, and the compounding frequency, which relates to the compounding period. So the compounding period annually means it's compounded once, would be the frequency. If it's semi-annual, then it's compounded twice a year. If it's quarterly, it's compounded 4 times a year. And if it's monthly, then the number of times it's compounded in a year is 12. Okay, so a compound interest rate is normally quoted with a number for the annual rate, and the annual rate, or what the rate that's quoted is usually listed for the annual. So say it's 8%. That would be your annual or your nominal interest rate. And then words are stating the compounding frequency. So maybe it's 8% compounded semi-annually. So that means it's 8% for the entire year, but it's compounded twice during the year. Okay, here's another example. 3.5 compounded semi-annually. So 3.5%, that is your annual or your nominal interest rate. And then the compounding frequency is semi-annually. Okay, so here's another example. And daily would be number of times it's being compounded in a year is 365 times, and its compounding period is every day. Here's another example, very similar to the one that I gave you at the beginning. If your compounding period is once a year, you invest $1,000 at the end of that first year. If it's at 10%, you're going to earn $100. Then at the beginning of year 2, of course, at the end of year 1, beginning of year 2, basically the exact same day, the total amount that's in there is the 1,100. At the end of that second year, it's going to be that whole 1,100 that earned your interest, which will bring you up to the 1,210. Okay, so here are it's a good chart for you to remember. Okay, so the notation PV stands for present value, or it's your principal. The future value is FV. N is the number of interest periods. M is the number of interest periods per year. Okay. And J is the nominal yearly interest rate that is compounded so many times in a year. And I is the interest rate per conversion period. Okay, so the formula to figure out what your annual interest rate is, your periodic interest rate, you would take your annual or your nominal interest rate, which is J, divided by the number of compoundings per year to give you your periodic interest rate. So if you know your interest rate is 8% compounded semi-annually, okay, so the J is 8%, you know it's compounded semi-annually, so J divided by your M, which is 2, would give you the periodic interest rate of 4, okay? So every 6 months, it's going to be 4%. Okay, so here's an example. Calculate the periodic interest rate corresponding to 10.5 compounded annually. So take a couple of minutes and try these to come up with the periodic interest rate. So your I, your periodic interest rate, equals your J, which is your annual or nominal rate, divided by M, the number of times it's being compounded in the year. Okay, so let's go over them. Hopefully you stopped the video and gave these a try. So A, it's being compounded once a year, so therefore your periodic interest rate is the same as your annual interest rate. B, we've got the 975 divided by 2 gives you the periodic interest rate of 4.875. For C, 9 divided by 4 gives you the periodic interest rate of 225. And finally, D, compounded monthly, is your 9.5 divided by 12, gives you the periodic interest rate of less than 1%, 0.7916% per month. Okay, so calculating the number of compounding periods, which is N. So that's where you take the number of compoundings per year, which is your M, multiply that by the number of years. So if you're investing for 20 years, 20 times 2, so the total number of compounding periods within that time frame would be 40. Okay, so calculate the number of compounding periods, how many times compounding is done in total if you compound $100 for 3 years at 6% annually, 6% semi-annually, and 6% quarterly. And remember, calculate the number of compounding periods. So you're calculating your N. Take a minute and give these a try. Okay, let's go over them. So for A, it's annually, it's only once, so your total N is 3. B, semi-annual, so 3 years times twice a year equals a number of compounding periods of 6. For C, number of compounding periods is 12. Okay. So you invest some money for 4 years at a rate of 6% compounded monthly. Identify the values for J, M, N, and I. If you need to refresh your memory as to what each of them stands for, please go back and have a look in your textbook. Take a minute and give this one a try. Okay, let's solve it together. So J equals 6% because it's your annual interest rate. M is the number of compounding periods. That would be 12 because it's compounded monthly. N is the number of compounding in total, which is for 4 years times 12 times a year gives you 48 compounding periods. And I is your annual interest rate divided by the number of periods per year gives you an interest rate per period of 0.5% or 0.5% per month. Okay, so here's another one for a nominal rate of 5.9%. Determine the compounding frequency if the periodic interest rate is 1.475%. So we know that the periodic interest rate is equal to the nominal rate divided by the compounding frequency. So therefore, in order to come up with the compounding frequency, if we change that formula around, the compounding frequency, or your M, is equal to your J, which is your 5.9%, divided by your I, which is 1.475%, and therefore your M would be 4. So give that a try. And what is the nominal rate of interest if the periodic rate is 1.5% per quarter? So we know that it was quarterly. So if your periodic rate is 1.5% quarterly, multiply that by your 4, and that'll give you your nominal rate or your annual rate of 6%. Okay, I've assigned some questions at the end of this section 9.1. Give those a try. And then in the next video, we will move on to your future values, which is part 9.2 in your textbook. Thanks, everyone.